G'day, I'm Rob.
I'm Dave.
And you're listening to the Doctor Who show's Hot Take spin-off shows, where every new season of Doctor Who, we watch the episodes, then turn on the mics, ideas half-formed, maybe concepts completely missed, and we give our hot take on what we've just seen. And at the end of the season, we always roll back and do a more considered overview, and I think that's enough explanation for any new listeners. Dave.
Hello, Rob. Yes, we're going to talk about the new episode of Doctor Who, and this is perhaps a very unique situation, Rob.
How so?
I want to just mention this before we dive in, because I realised as I was about to watch this that we are not so much watching a new season of Doctor Who so much as the second half of a former season of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Because as we know, and as we've discussed on our show many times, the two seasons were recorded back to back. So in terms of production, this is really one season split into two for broadcast. And when I think about how much the Chibnall era seasons were very much reactions to each other,
Yes.
the Moffat seasons were often in part reactions to each other. I remember at the end of the first season of Chibnall Whittaker's time saying, that really lacked a lot of sort of continuity and monsters and explosions, and season 2 going, well, they hurt us because we've got a lot of continuity and monsters and explosions. but we're not going to get that here, and I think it's weird that it's been a year for us, but only a week for the production.
Yeah, because of course they still have been recording stuff more recently, maybe regeneration scenes, but broadly, yes, I've been saying this stuff to people on Facebook groups of late, because they've been saying, I wonder what this new season will be like. And my standard answer, my stock answer almost, has been, well, it was done at the same time as the first season, so I think tonally it'll be pretty much the same. Yeah, so that's a little bit of just an opening thing that I wanted to say before we dive in, Rob. No, I appreciate that, and I know where you're coming from. One thing we always like to do in our Hot Takes, Dave, is give a word of the week, which we circle around to later in the show, which we'll do in our Sports Desk section. Do you have a word of the week?
Well, you'd be disappointed in me, Rob, if I didn't. I mean, this is week one. I haven't done my homework. There's a problem. I do, Rob. My word of the week is ideas.
Ideas? My word of the week is progressive.
Fair enough.
Dave, because this is our first episode of this Hot Take season, I thought it might be interesting to talk about, just before we get into the meat and potatoes, going into the new season, how did we feel? I guess you've just talked about one aspect of how you felt, like, oh, this is going to be the second part of the same season. But more broadly, how did you feel?
I don't know whether it's a combination of my residual feelings about the last season, the fact that I've been insanely busy with work.
Yeah.
We are, of course, for listeners overseas, in the middle of the federal election in Australia, and I work in politics, so it's been sort of 12, 13, 14, sometimes more hour days for me. All the fact that I am just getting older, and my friends and social group are getting older, or the combination thereof, that this hasn't been a particularly large build-up for me. In fact, when you said sort of last week, we need to start working out when we're going to record next week, and I thought, Christ, it's next week.
Yeah.
So it has sort of stuck up on me, so I haven't really been reflecting on it. Whether that means that I'm not excited or whether that means I'm distracted, I'm not sure. But I certainly haven't been anticipating.
Yeah. I've got two thoughts. In terms of going into the season as a whole, I think it's all been rather muted, not just for myself, but I think fandom in general. And I don't know if that relates to the whole, is Shooty off, is RTD off, will the show be shelved after this, at least for a little while, all that sort of talk. Maybe people feel it's already done and dusted and we're already at the wake. I don't know. But then specifically going into this episode, because there'd been a premiere, a lot of reviews were already out there, maybe more reviews than usual. And while they were non-spoilery, I still felt going into this, I knew what the story broadly was, and I just needed a few bits coloured in for me, so that felt a bit weird. And we also had Louise Griffin writing in the Radio Times. I made a note of this. She was talking about how the episode's climax involved a ludicrous reveal. She said the episode failed to stick the landing. She said it had very on-the-nose writing. She said characters were stating the obvious rather than letting the episode's theme speak for themselves. And so I suddenly had this thought, oh God, do I know what the episode is going to feel like to watch as well? Not just what might happen, but what is it going to feel like? And I felt a bit deflated going in knowing so much, kind of like, oh God, are we doing all this again? And We can tease out whether that was the case or not as we go along, I think. But yeah, I felt a bit weirdly deflated going into this, just because of the outside noise.
Yeah, I think it's also worth just saying, and we are talking about things other than the episode more than we normally would in a hot take, so we'll finish this up very quickly.
Massively.
I think it's worth pointing out, though, that our peer group, or our social circle, or however you want to put it in Doctor Who fans, does skew in a particular way. It's not universally people of a similar age who grew up watching Doctor Who on the ABC, but it just does definitely skew towards people of a certain age who grew up watching Doctor Who on the ABC, particularly the McCoy era new, multiple repeats of the Pertwee, Tom Baker era. It's people who were really cutting their teeth in fandom when the new adventures were out. As I say, it's not universal, but it does skew a particular way. So I'm very, very cognizant that the vibes around my circle of Doctor Who friends is skewed.
And mine too. Why don't we just broadly kick into what was good about this episode, Dave? Was anything good? What did you like?
I like the fact that it wasn't Space Babies or The Devil's Court.
That's a start.
That was definitely a start. I liked the intent and the sense of ambition of this episode. I think if Doctor Who's going to do alien worlds, cool robots, big sci-fi premises, that's a good start. Mm-hmm. And so I give it a big tick for the concept and the very basic premise. I think that's not a bad place to start a new season of Doctor Who.
Yeah. And look, I think the general story was interesting too. It was bonkers, but it was quite Doctor Who. In places it teetered into, would I dare show this to my work bestie? Oh, Christ, no, I really wouldn't. But then there were some parts that were really solid. And as I say, the overall story and the idea, and maybe this ties into what you were saying too, the ambition that was there, I think was quite intriguing. There was something there. Did it succeed completely in the actual execution? Maybe not. But I liked what was happening underneath the surface.
Yeah, I would be a little bit harsher than you, Rob. I actually don't think that it did work all that well. I think what we had was a concept, which was positive, but then we had, and this is perhaps the carry-on of RTD2 and what we saw last season, we had plot by meme or plot by reel. And I saw a number of scenes here where I thought I can absolutely see RTD writing this and thinking, oh, this will be fantastic. It'll be a great reel. I can see it being shared. It'll be marvellous. People want to watch it. Go, oh, wow, that's amazing. And them saying, yeah, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. It'll be a great reel. It's a good 30 seconds the kids can share. And just going, yes, it is, but it makes absolutely no sense. And I think the 9-letter or the every 9th word scene was an example of that. It's just a stupid idea that robots arbitrarily can't hear the 9th words. It's not they're not working too well and they can't comprehend human subtlety, or they're not, they can't get sarcasm, or they don't hear every word every now and then. But this sort of they don't hear every 9th word, so that way I could do this thing.
Or how about they don't hear a certain frequency, so if you speak, I don't know, sotto voce, they can't hear you or something. I mean, that would make more sense.
That's right. As I say, something where the Doctor, if it's sarcastic, they don't get it, or as you say, if it's a particular tone, they don't get it. This to me was sort of really quite ridiculous and arguably even infantile, but I could see the reel of working out that the Doctor's doing this thing every 9th word. But again, I don't know why it was necessary to then go back and flash back to the every 9th word and put the sentence together, because I know I was certainly quickly tuning in that he was dropping in a particular word and working out what that sentence was. And I don't know whether it's a dumbing down of Doctor Who or a dumbing down of broadcast primetime television more generally. It could be both. But I really did sense that this was a case of like an idea done very sillily and then really dumbed down with a week to go back and show them. They did the same thing later on with the revelation about, did something weird happen to you when you were on the spaceship with time? It's like, yes, we all remember. It was 10 minutes ago. We watched it. No, we have to do a flashback. And that was, I think, just an example of, I don't know, and I'll be interested to hear from our listeners who watch the BBC in prime time on a regular basis. Is this a symptom of Who, or is this a symptom of television? Because it occurs to me that I really don't watch broadcast television much at all. I watch
Right.
I watch streaming services that are geared to my liking and my taste, which is fine. So maybe this is just Doctor Who doing what TV is doing.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got a couple of things I thought were good, so why don't I rip into those before
Yeah, go for it.
before we go too negative. I think the design aesthetic was really cool. It was a real retro 60s looking set. The city, I noted, even had some people thinking, oh, it's a Dalek city, back when there were trailers and people were doing trailer breakdowns. They're like, oh, look at that effect of that person getting shot. That's a Dalek gun. Oh, that's a Dalek city. Look at all that gleaming city there, you know. And of course it wasn't that, but I liked the look. It was colourful and odd looking without being silly. I think the robots disappointed me enough. You could literally see how the human inside was accommodated by the shape. I think that could have been a more clever design. But broadly, I like the design of the overall episode, particularly that 60s kind of look. Oh, it was cool, I thought.
Unfortunately, Rob, once again, I'm going to be a bit more negative than you, and I'm sorry about that. I really am.
No. Oh, no.
I thought the look was visually exciting. I thought the look looked expensive, and I thought you could see where the money was going. The retro cartoon style didn't work for me.
Okay.
When I saw the spaceship, I just thought that's a little bit too silly. It's a little bit too comic book. And so that put me off. Listeners who've listened to this before over many years will know that I'm very dry when it comes to these sort of things, and so that didn't really work for me. The robots themselves were a cool concept. I liked their guns, the effect. I thought that was pretty cool. But that leads me to another big comment I had about the episode, which was a bit of a sense of, have we seen this all before? The idea of a slightly baffled robot, the idea of them going back to Earth to find someone, and they go and find them in a hospital to get them, and the doctor just doesn't find them, and then even down to the emoji faces on the robots. You know, we've done that before, and I just did sort of wonder, have we seen this all before, and is that a problem? I mean, Planet of the Daleks, look, we've seen that all before, and I think that's a great story. So I'm not condemning the robot revolution because of that, but I did have that feeling watching it of, I've seen this all before. And it was really the emoticon or emojicon, whatever they called, the faces of the robots. I thought, I've seen that before, and it doesn't feel like that long ago.
No. In essence, it was 2 Doctors ago, but I know what you're saying. It doesn't feel that long ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I hear. Speaking of colourful stuff, though, I also liked those colourful, freaky effects where the Doctor saved Belinda after the certificates touched. It looked very basic. It looked like something they could have done on the Tomorrow People back in the 70s, or how they could have done the boat ride in Willy Wonka or something. But I really liked how it looked. I think it suited the look of the city, the look of the episode. Did you sort of watch that scene and think, this is very 70s, like, you know, just the way colourful lights were flashing on their faces and their bodies sort of floating on the screen, and just weird stuff was happening, Dave. I thought, I like this.
Yeah, I did. I went to 2001.
Oh, yeah, okay, yep.
I thought it was very 2001 vibes, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Rob, let's talk about the Doctor, because I spent the whole last season not quite working out who this 15th Doctor was.
Yeah.
And I've realised watching this episode who this 15th Doctor was, and perhaps why Gatwa's persona has been hard for me to grasp and perhaps hard for me to really get into. Mm-hmm. Because I've realised, I think, and maybe I'm drawing the wrong conclusions. Again, Rob, you let me know, listeners let me know. But I think that Russell T Davies, when he said he was doing a different sort of conception of the Doctor, really genuinely meant it. Mm-hmm. And I think you see that on screen here. And maybe I've been clinging on, because I've been watching Doctor Who for 40-something years. Yep. And so there's a lot of preconceived notions and background shaping my views. For me, the Doctor is otherworldly and mysterious and different, but also timeless. I think the Doctor has consistently had a very Edwardian sort of pre-war feel to his aesthetic. He has a very sort of not quite with it, not of this world sort of vibe. Even a very modern Doctor like Matt Smith's Doctor was very fish out of water. Even David Tennant's Doctor, who was probably the most closest to a human society Doctor we had, to the point that in the end the one of the splits of the Tenant Doctor. I mean, let's face it, there's dozens of them now. But they're the ones that can go and live a happy domestic life because he's that bit close. But even he has moments of, I don't do things that way, I don't look at the world that way.
Yeah, yeah.
But I could never imagine that Doctor dropping in quite as much, not just pop culture, but pop language. And so watching Gatwa's Doctor drop in really trendy stuff. In fact, I think there are a few references where I've gone, wow, that was big when they were filming this 12 months ago, and now it just feels a little bit cringe. Well, probably I would have said it was cringe then, it feels very cringe now. It just feels very of the moment. And that's not how I conceive the Doctor, and I'm disappointed by that. I get why Russell T Davies is doing it.
Yeah.
But it is a fundamentally different conception of the Doctor. And that would lead me to his costume for this, which I have related thoughts on, but I've monologued for a bit here, Rob. I've done a bit of a Friends Romans countryman on you. So your reaction?
Well, I've got two things to say, and they actually lead into costumes, so that might be a nice segue back to you in a moment. Look, I've taken the Gatwa portrayal to be the Gatwa portrayal, and it is what it is. Beyond that, though, I was looking at what the Doctor was doing, and I thought, okay, he's infiltrating a society, he's working with rebels, he's got himself a new companion, and didn't we all think the moment she was like, I can't wait to travel with you, we knew she was a goner.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I have no real complaints about what he was doing in the story, and his character is his character, and I know that's different to the more Edwardian Doctor, as you say. Of course, fashion-wise, they just had to stick him in a skirt for the start of the story, which I found very curious from one particular point of view, that this is the same RTD who wouldn't let Tennant regenerate into Whittaker's costume a few years ago, because in his words, that would be an affront to drag culture, to have Tennant in women's clothing. Even though it was quite a boyish costume, when you think about it, like just shorts and a t-shirt,
yeah,
and a jacket. But now Shooty's in a skirt. I can't keep up with this stuff, Dave. It just seems RTD does what he wants and makes up excuses as he goes along as to why he's doing it.
Yeah, and I think RTD also said at the time he didn't want the photo of the Doctor in drag to be the story.
There you go.
He didn't want that to distract from it. So I wonder whether putting the Doctor in a skirt is his deliberate attempt to create a story. I don't care all that much, except to the point that I was making before. There has been a line from Hartnell through to Whittaker in terms of the Doctor's style and an aesthetic that is varied but consistent, and this is fundamentally new and different. Is it a bad thing that the Doctor, after 60-odd years, has been reconceived and is doing something significantly different? Probably not. But does it great for someone like you and me, who has had been there for 40 of the last 60 years and defines the Doctor in a particular way? For me, it did. Do I think this is going to be a bit of a culture war thing? Yeah, absolutely, because a male person wearing a skirt is not wrong, it's not unusual, but it is uncommon.
And look, there are cultures around the place, I think up in Asia, where wearing a skirt-like sarong or something is normal.
Scotland, Greece.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not a wrong thing, and I'm not going down a cultural path, but it is it's unconventional, uncommon for an Englishman to do that, and the Doctor is in our minds an English conception.
Yeah.
So look, I was like, okay, he's done this, and I think it's going to be a cultural thing. Fine. My concern is that it's like, well, this isn't the aesthetic of the Doctor I'm used to, and okay, this is a different Doctor. This is a fundamentally different Doctor to what I'm used to. This is a break with the past. That's something I'm going to have to process.
Yeah. My concern is more, why are we doing culture war things? And that's a concern across all of pop culture. You even see interviews with stars of shows saying, oh, we're going to piss off some people this season. And it's like, why? Why do you want to do that? Call me old-fashioned, but shouldn't we be inclusive of everyone and not trying to piss off people? I don't know.
Yeah, look, I don't know either, but positive, right? Positive.
Yeah.
New companion.
Yeah. Broadly, I like the cut of Verida's jib in this, and I think it would have been a very poor episode if I didn't.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
a companion debut story should be a strong first outing for them, so we get to know her and we get to see her at work and we get to see the share house she lives in, and she was the central plot of the story, having the whole society called Miss Belinda Chandra, which is funny, and it's a bonkers kind of Doctor Who thing that I was talking about earlier. So I was here for it. I like her. Yeah.
Yeah, I like her too. I like the conception. I like that she's an intelligent, capable woman. I think she is the 2025 version of Dr. Lee Shaw, and who is, who is my favourite companion. So I do see some mirrors there, and I think that's really cool.
That's a big call, Dave, from you.
Yeah. No, look, I'm not saying she's going to live up to it. Who knows? She's had 40 minutes. So,
right.
Let's give her a chance one way or the other. But I did sort of like that conception of her. I like the idea that she's not take me on this venture and show me the stars. She's, no, you're a bit creepy and you're a bit weird. I don't like you. Take me home, please. I think that's a really good idea. Is it going to be Tegan done well? Perhaps. We will find out. I was a bit worried when they did start to lead into the whole, your genes and your thing and the past and the present. And I was like, oh no, not another one. Not another companion who's the most important being in the whole. No, don't do this.
I was joking with Mike Solko about that on our previous monthly episode.
You were. So that's a bit of a red light. That's a bit of a red flag, as they say today. See what happens. But great performance. I dug her far more than I dug Millie Gibson's character, who I never disliked, but I never really dug. I've gone, I like this, and I want to see where she goes. And Modern Lee Shaw is my high praise.
Yeah, it really is. Digging into my what wasn't good pile, and this kind of ties into Belinda Chandra as a character, I don't think the whole Al was a bit of a prick all along aspect really worked. It was a bit sort of eye-rolling for me and a bit cringe. I would have been more interested, Dave, if Belinda had thought him really sweet, but he disappeared from her life mysteriously. Obviously, he was spirited away to this bloody planet. And then when she found him again, looking like a knockoff Cyberwoman from Torchwood, she could have been really horrified by that. And rather than being, you're causing trouble on this planet and you were a prick all along anyway, it would have been, Jesus, my bestie from 17 years ago, who I was really sweet on, has been chopped up and integrated into a machine because of this offhand comment I made, in the rocket ship. That's far more interesting and dramatic to me than, look, a bad thing has happened to the quote-unquote bad person. Just a tweak here and there to the script. I think he could have had much the same story, but one that's more horrific and dramatic on a personal level for Verida's character.
Yeah, there are a few things that didn't really work for me with this one. I think the very start of that, the original sin here was getting two people clearly in their mid to late 20s trying to play 16-year-olds.
I was trying to work out what age she was meant to be.
Yeah, I was as well. I was like, why are they acting so childish? Is this a thing? No, they're pretending they're 16. Oh, wow.
I was thinking, are they meant to be even younger? Like, is she, she's 30 now? So 17 years ago, she'd been 13. No, she can't be 13. I was doing all this math in my head.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, so I just thought it was a bit sort of ridiculous. I thought it was a shame that the ex-boyfriend and the flatmate, I actually thought were the same character for a couple of scenes.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Because they were both sort of, the similar sort of age with sort of blonde floppy hair. So I got a bit confused there. I agree with you. I don't think they really sold the idea that Al was a baddie really well. I think what we needed was that to be sewn through the episode. I think something like he kept giving me all these sweet gestures and he gave me that certificate, but it turns out that da-da-da-da-da, or... just a couple of references through, maybe I'm, something, so that it wasn't a half a second flashback of him being a bit of a dick and that just becoming a whole, so hang on, did that all happen on the one night? Is that the end of the relationship? This relationship doesn't sit in my mind as a real thing that I can believe. It's a thing that's bad because we were told in one flashback for half a second it was bad, and that's not good story writing. So I think that the twist just didn't work. And to keep going with what didn't work for me, when they pulled the thing down and they said it was him, I was like, okay, that's really interesting. But then when they've done it's not AI, it's Al.
I have a note on that too.
I literally yelled at the television, oh, for God's sake, because we've done this before as well. My low point of the last season was the it's the wrong anagram moment, and this was just like, this was wholly stupid, particularly because the robots themselves were calling him AI, and then when it opened and we're all revealed it's Al, they're like, oh yeah, he's Al. It's like, no, so you clearly knew it was Al. You weren't mistaken, you weren't confused. You're just doing this for another cool Insta reveal, and it was just dumb.
Yeah, they couldn't read the font properly.
It was just dumb, Rob.
Yeah, look, continuing on the laughs, I laughed, and not in a good way, Dave, when the bloke at the end is like, we're going to honour everyone who died by renaming this tower. And they rename it after one person.
I know. Oh, I know.
Oh, Jesus, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, look, long explanation scenes that I think would have been better had we actually seen more. I think there need to be a bit more show, not tell.
Yeah.
Rob, a couple of little rats and mice things before we go to the sports desk.
Okay.
Tick the box, Shooty cried in this one.
Yes, he did.
Lots and lots of explanation. This was sort of, Harry Potter 3 levels of let's all stand around and explain the history of everything to everyone for long moments, which was a shame. And I thought particularly shame because the action scenes in the first act were actually pretty cool. And I've gone, oh, great, we've got blasters and robots and stuff. This is really cool. But in the end, it felt almost classic Trek of sort of Kirk and Spock standing around, oh, actually, Captain, this computer has been around for 5,000 years, and Kirk sort of doing that, well, computer, logically, you now have to destroy yourself. Yeah, it felt very classic Trek. And who would invent a robot that goes around going polish to the point that you just want to kick it? It's just a stupid idea. It's meant to be cutesy. And again, maybe an indication that this is Doctor Who for a generation that's not me.
Yeah. Dave, shall we go to the sports desk?
I've been waiting for this. Let's go.
I do this joke every season, Dave. I'm dusting off the sports desk, putting on the green blazer. This is where we do our words of the week, folks, player of the week, foul of the week, and MVP of the week. Shall we kick off with our word of the week, Dave? What was yours again?
My word of the week was ideas. Mm-hmm. And that's because I think this is one of those stories that exists as a series of pretty neat ideas. I can imagine RTD going, I want the shot of the robots kidnapping her and flying off in a 60s rocket ship. I want the moment of every ninth word. I want the moment of the thing comes down. It's not AI, it's Al, and he's in there. I can see him going, these moments are going to be brilliant. But the connecting tissue between them, for me, was just not remotely there. Yeah. And I think that Doctor Who by meme is disappointing, but it was a show of ideas, not a story or a plot.
Yeah, agreed.
Your word, Rob?
My word, Dave, was progressive. And hopefully I've wrong-footed everyone into thinking this will be a comment on The Message. But no, I think this was a progression. I think it was an incremental increase from where we were at episode 1 of the previous season. So you've sort of prefaced this earlier in the chat. For all its faults, I think this is easily better than Space Babies was. Yes. So it was progressive in the sense that it's moved us ahead from there when I compare season opener with season opener in the Gatwa era.
No, fair enough, Rob. Do you want to keep going with your play of the week?
Alrighty. This might seem an odd one, but I really enjoyed, at the end of the episode, when the Doctor couldn't get the TARDIS going, and the tension started to build. And the music was pretty good. And it created the mystery for the season, sort of signposted what it will be. And putting aside whether we need a mystery across the season, whether it's the mystery of Belinda Chandra or the mystery of quite what's going on here, I think it was done well. And then the stuff floating through space after they left, I thought, yes, this is good. I'm interested in that. I felt some tension and peril there that I didn't actually feel in the body of the episode. So that was my play of the week.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, Rob. I did like that ending to the episode. It was a little bit spoiled for me by the hangover of the last season, where there are all these bizarre, like, what's going on here? And it turns out the answer's not much. Yeah. So maybe I'm a little bit cynical because of that. But yes, it was very, very nicely done. My play of the week was the death of a companion.
Okay. One we never had.
One we never saw on screen, but she spent 6 months with the Doctor, which is longer than some of his other companions. So for him, that was an Adric moment. And I just found it very interesting that we got to see that play out the way it did. Now, look, like you, the moment she said, I'm looking forward to going off and being your companion and seeing the stars, I thought, well, she's done. But the fact that it was seconds later and so brutally, it wasn't her sacrificing herself to save something. It wasn't a moment of decision. It was just like, wow, she's gone. Just brutally. Ooh, I like that. I thought that was a really good play.
Yeah, good shout there, Dave. Foul of the week. Do you want to continue on maybe with Foul of the week?
Look, I'll be quick because I've already mentioned it. It's the every ninth word sequence. I think there will be people out there who will generally think that was a fascinating, fun, clever idea. And if it worked for you, fantastic. That's really, really good. It didn't work for me. I thought it was just a stupid idea. It didn't make any sense. And it was really brought home by the flashback where I'm like, did we need to do it this way? I feel like I've been talked down to. That's just me. It was my foul of the week.
All right. My foul of the week is Alan becoming a sperm and egg that was polished off the floor and the Doctor reveling in that. I think RTD wanted the audience to punch the air and be like, yeah, RTD just told us he was an incel and now he's dead. Yeah. And it was a comedy moment too. How glorious, because incels must die. But putting aside the general point of view that life is still life, I think the Doctor in particular would try to preserve a life. Has RTD forgotten Boomtown, his own script, where the idea of Margaret Slitheen going back to an egg was a chance to start again? And I know as a sperm and egg on the floor, I get Alan isn't inside a human body, so maybe he's a goner anyway. But the idea that the Doctor would start doing high kicks, like he's in the goddamn Moulin Rouge, Dave, at the death of a life form, just doesn't ring true for me at all. No one can convince me of this. Come at me, listeners. Honestly, that's not the Doctor. Like, he got polished off the floor. Yeah, let's do a high kick. Yeah. Like, seriously? Seriously?
Yeah, it's curious. I haven't really gone down this path in my notes, but I'm not really sort of au fait. Maybe I'm not online enough about the whole incel thing. I understand that, the concept of people who, aren't successful in their love life and are therefore involuntarily celibate, I think is what it's meant to stand for. And that sort of evolved into a, like, owning the label sort of thing. I'm not going to pretend I know any more than that. It's not something, as I say, I've really read about. I understand that there is some quite negative and offensive aspects of a subculture that's driven out of that. But again, I really couldn't tell you much about it. I would have thought if Doctor Who is about messaging, and it is, then the lesson would be you can be a better person. I would have thought that this guy treats women badly should be resolved by learning that you don't have to be that your role models were wrong or your view of the world was wrong, and that you can embrace respecting other people, that you can embrace respecting women and having healthy relationships, and that would have been a more satisfying message than he's part of a subculture that is bad, now he's dead. I kind of agree with you, and I again suspect there'll be a lot of online debate about the whole, Planet of the Incels line. I was sort of like, yeah, I'm kind of aware of incel culture. I don't really know a lot about it. It was sort of went over my head. I don't know whether I'm in the minority or the majority there. Again, listeners, I'd love to hear. Like, I've heard the phrase, I know what it means, kind of, but I'm not down in the weeds on incels, and I don't know if they deserve to die or should just be refined.
Well, no one does.
Well, yeah.
The Doctor should not be reveling in a life form's death, ever.
Yeah. No, look, I mean,
Doctor.
that's obviously right. So I was neither sort of celebratory or affronted by the whole incel thing. I was just like, oh, that seems a bit online. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's going to date too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will. It will. Like a lot of things. But Rob, your player of the week. And are we going to have a snap?
I'm sure we will, Dave, because I think this might be the same across a lot of hot takes and reviews into the future. It's Varida Sethu. She's the new girl in town. All eyes are on her, so she gets to do a lot. It's her debut story, as I said earlier, and I liked what I saw. That doesn't mean I think she's super likable yet. You know, compared to Martha Jones, who I'd be happy to ask out for a beer after one episode, the Belinda Chandra character, I think, is a bit of an acquired taste. You know, I can see how we're probably going to come to like her, but up front, and she's clearly got a strong moral compass, I'll say that too. You know, she wanted to sacrifice herself for the greater good and all of that stuff. But up front, she's not overly friendly or matey with the Doctor, which is something we're used to with companions, you know, and I guess that's being played up to reinforce that she just wants to go home and do her next shift at the hospital. But I think Varida did well here to sort of portray all of that, to get through her first episode. It's got to be Varida for mine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's clearly a snap. I don't think anyone who's listened to the last 30-something minutes will be expecting anything other than a snap on that. It was a very good performance. It's a very interesting character. I think he's doing something different with the character, which is good. But particularly the moment where I thought she was really good was in that final confrontation with the Doctor. That could have been overwrought. It could have been over the top. But the whole just quiet realisation that maybe the Doctor's not this centre of morality and perfect goodness that she was expecting was played really, really well. And I want to see more of that. I think that was my big takeaway. That's definitely my player of the week.
Yeah, he scanned her without her permission, which would be something, I guess, that as a medical professional, she would be across very much. Yeah,
it's not something that really sort of occurred to me, and it did sort of, again, sort of stand out as a, like, okay. But I'm used to 40-odd years of that happening in sci-fi. I mean...
Yeah.
You know, if every time somebody was scanned without permission, well, McCoy and Crusher and Data and, you know, there's a lot of people who will get in trouble for that. So I thought that, I don't know what I made of that, but who cares? Because it was overall a very good performance and an interesting character.
All right. Overall, do you have a score?
Rob, if I'm grading on a curve and I'm scoring this as a piece of RTD2 Gatwa Who, it's a B to B minus. I didn't hate it, didn't love it, but it did the things that they're trying to do very, very competently and very, very well. If I'm screwing it compared to my expectation of the whole of Doctor Who, it's going to be much, much lower. Because it's not the Doctor Who that I grew up with. It is deliberately not the Doctor Who I grew up with. I don't condemn it for that, but I'm not going to love it the way that I love Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Of course. And I'm starting a new scoring system for this series, so listeners, don't try and compare my scores to things I did in Hot Takes 3 years ago and say, oh, well, he liked that one as much as that one. No, this is just based on this season. I'm going to stick my flag in the sand and say for this season, I think this is probably about a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, okay. Interesting that we've both felt the need to sort of recalibrate.
Yes.
Because this does feel like a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And I'm retrospectively saying that about the last season as well. I saw the last season as, you know, the 61st year of Doctor Who. I've really realised now this is the second year of very new Doctor Who and a very different concept of the show and the character. And that's something I'm probably going to wrestle with over a few hot takes.
Yeah, for sure.
Listeners, I'd love your feedback on what we've said, particularly in this episode, because I think Rob and I have both said a lot of sort of very big calls. Well, you might be sitting there going, yeah, guys, I'm glad you put that in words because I feel the same way. Or you might be going... Listen to those Aussie wankers. What the hell are they talking about? And I'm very open to both of those possibilities, so please let me know.
Yeah, as I said at the start, we just turn on the mics. Our ideas are half-formed. The concepts might be completely missed. You know, this is a hot take.
It really is.
Next time, Dave. Next up, we have Lux, which is described as the Doctor's quest to get Belinda home takes the TARDIS to Miami in 1952, where an abandoned cinema is hiding a terrifying secret. Now, this is the one with the Mr. Ringadin character played by Alan Cumming coming out of the screen, Dave. Any thoughts on it?
It looks intriguing. I think it looks interesting and intriguing. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, interesting setting, I think.
Yeah, look, I think so. Now, Rob, these hot takes are the only part of the Doctor Who show that are deliberately fixed points in time. This is all about the 12th of April 2025, which means this is a rare occasion where I can say to all the listeners who are out there celebrating Passover, all the best for Passover. I hope you have a lovely weekend with your family.
Absolutely. And from me too.
But on that note, I was Dave.
And I was Rob.
And we'll be it again soon.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.